Senator Esther Okenyuri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. And let me just clarify, I was not interjecting my senior Senator Omogeni. I was bringing to your attention that in as much as we are pressing these gadgets, our names do not reflect where the clerks are. So I want to appreciate, because I've been literally on my knees since morning, want to engage on this issue. Mr. Speaker, first I want to give my condolences to the families who lost their young people amid the ongoing protests, starting with one Rex Masai and several others whose names I might not mention on this floor, Mr. Speaker. You can actually see, if we have to strain to even get chance to speak, and yet we represent young people in this house, what about the several young people who are watching us to air their issues in this house, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, whatever issues that have been brought by the GenZs are not new issues in this country. Look at the issue of restructuring government. We had the Abdikadir report of 2015 that actually listed the parastatals in this country and how to deal with different policy issues that were affecting each. Mr. Speaker, we do not need a repeat of the same. We have very intelligent Kenyans who've gone down and actually done this work and given recommendations, which those recommendations are gathering dust in the name of reports which have never been implemented to date, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of GenZ is not going to be forgotten anytime soon. It will keep reoccurring. But I want to urge that let it not be that we have to have protests for issues regarding young people, Kenyans, to be heard. Mr. Speaker, these are some of the reasons why generally people feel like maybe we are not listening. Mr. Speaker, when you look at some of the issues they seconded, if I refer to DCI needs to conclude the investigations on some of the people who are arrested. IPOA also needs to swing into action. An organization like NCIC should be disbanded with immediate effect, Mr. Speaker, because a lot of hate is going round all over and no one is doing anything about it, Mr. Speaker. We cannot, those are some of the organizations which are siphoning public resources without nabbing people who are actually giving hate to the public and inciting the public, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I also talk about the matter where SRC is recommending a pay rise for legislators, I want to turn down that in particular, Mr. Speaker, and I hope the newspaper headlines tomorrow will be reading that MPs protest pay rises. Mr. Speaker, it can't be that when one issue is good for the other, it's bad for another. When corruption in the national government is mentioned, let the county government also be mentioned, Mr. Speaker. The money that SRC wants to add us should go into putting that money together so that JSS teachers can be employed, more equipping of public health facilities, so that Kenyans generally get the services they rightfully require, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to indicate that social media is a very active tool, and I salute the young people for agitating for change in this country, Mr. Speaker. We didn't have to wait for the young people to set direction, because sometimes, starting with this house, we are told of ranking members, so we are borrowing from those who have come before us. But in this case, the list of the expected in society are the ones who are now giving direction, Mr. Speaker. That needs to be something we as a house need to reflect about. and not just leave it to maybe the president to implement. The president has already invited the young people on X tomorrow, and I want to encourage most of them to flood that space and raise whatever issues they have to do with how best we can change leadership in this country. But as much as that is left to the president, we as politicians also need to put a hand in playing a role to fight corruption, Mr. Speaker. Because corruption, I actually think Kenyans generally, we are born with an affinity towards wanting to do something to get something in return. Mr. Speaker, we want a society where for me to ascend to power, it shouldn't be about my DNA or sexual orientation, Mr. Speaker. That's the only way we can encourage young people who are watching me this afternoon from different rural villages to also be good in whatever they are doing and call a spade, Mr. Speaker. As I come down to conclude what I actually had to say this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, we've had several recommendations from serious reports that have been written in this country. We need to revisit the recommendation by those reports, like the Abdul Kadir Mohammed report actually mentions most of these state corporations that should be wound up or how to better transform them so that services can be given to the people. We cannot purely make those corporations avenues to give jobs to people who have already exceeded their usefulness, Mr. Speaker. We have several young people who are looking into these jobs. And by the way, most of the young people who are demonstrating, they are able to do whatever works they do, like in the digital economy. Most of them are earning online. So whatever they want to be implemented by the government currently is to ensure that they have a conducive environment whereby they can smoothly make their money, so that we are not making them poor and creating paradises for ourselves, Mr. Speaker. As I conclude and take a seat, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that let us not downplay the whole issue of agitation for change in this country. It's real. I have most of my friends who are actually on the streets, and I couldn't actually tell them anything because then they'll think I'm here to praise and worship the government that has given me an appointment. Sometimes, Mr. Speaker, it's also good to speak the truth as it is, because it is in one way that we make our governance better, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want today to say maybe otherwise what I wouldn't have said in my few remaining years in this House. To the President, we need radical changes. People need to see heads rolling. Mr. Speaker, we've had people who've been implicated in several scandals which are well known to public domain. Politics should be separated with friendship. If you hold on to your friends, Mr. President, we unfortunately might sink down with them. So separate friendship from work. We are here to support your agenda. I believed in your agenda and I still do, but we need to separate the politics from friendship for us to steer this nation forward, so that we don't see the unnecessary issues we are seeing now. Because as we see now, the protesters have been infiltrated by anarchists who want to take us back to where we have been. Mr. Speaker, this is not about GenZ. It should be a general call by Kenyans, and let it start with we members of Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all,